Evening. This is Robert Sungenis coming to you once again in the open question program today for November 26, Tuesday, 2019. This program has been set aside for you to take any of your questions, comments on any topic related to the Bible, Christianity, Catholicism, tradition, the sacraments, theology in general, anything of concern to you. I, as your host of this program, will endeavor to answer your question the best of my ability with the knowledge that I have after 45 years of experience. Can't beat that, can you? Anyway, so this program is set aside for you. So I'm going to go right to the questions today after I do a little bit of advertising. As you know, Christmas is right around the corner, and what better gift to give than a book on theology or the Bible or Catholicism? And boy, do I have plenty of those for you. To cut it short, you can go to robertsungenis.com or robertsungenis.org, and you can see all the materials we have available for you. And we keep adding them, so we hope that your interest is picked continually, and purchase that for that favorite niece or nephew of yours who's a budding Catholic apologist in their teenage years, or say in their 20s, who wants to do the same thing I'm doing, teaching and defending the Catholic faith. We have written those books especially for them. So take advantage of it. Again, robertsungenis.com, .org, .net, whatever. They all go to the same place. And feel free to indulge and let us see what's in your wallet for this Christmas, for those of your family, relatives, whoever, who are in desperate need of education on the Catholic faith and all that goes with it. Okay, so for those of you who tried to tune in last Thursday on the Facebook channel of the principal, I wasn't there, and no good excuses, but and today, or this week rather, Thursday, we won't be having a program either on the Facebook channel for the principal because it will be Thanksgiving. But I promise you that I will be back the next Thursday. For those of you who have missed it this past Thursday, we'll make up for what we did. I'll spend a little bit more time on those issues that are of concern to you in science. Right now, as you know, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we set aside this time to answer questions of a spiritual nature, religious nature, from 7 to 8. And I'm going to try to stick to my schedule, 7 to 8. So I'll see what I can do about, keeping everything on track here. All right, so I'm going to go to my first question tonight. And lo and behold, it is from Ben Emerson. Greetings, Robert. Where is the Garden of Eden located, please? I have heard in Jerusalem and also in Iraq. Would it be possible to spot the flaming swords around it in our day? Where is Adam buried? I heard a theory that our Lord was crucified right above the spot where Adam was buried, and that some of our Lord's precious blood shed on the ground went down and touched Adam's body. What sayest thou about these matters, please? Okay. Well, we have about, 4 or 5 questions in that one question, so let me try to get to them. First one is, where is the Garden of Eden located? That was one of my actually favorite topics. I remember when I was in high school, we had to learn to do extemporaneous speech. And the teacher, Father Longo, went to a Catholic high school, gave us 5 different topics to choose from. And one of them was, where is the Garden of Eden located? And I picked that one and did my extemporaneous speech on it. But prior to that, of course, we had to do all the research on where the Garden of Eden was. And I got distracted on that project because I found a book that where the guy claimed that the Garden of Eden was at the North Pole. I forget the guy's name, but I was so intrigued by this theory that I spent probably 95% of the time on this book. And that's what I presented as the greatest possibility in my freshman English class for extemporaneous speech. And I've had fond memories of that because that's the first time I actually got up and spoke in front of people. And did quite well. As a matter of fact, my teacher said he was surprised, and because I was one of the more quiet ones in class, and when I got my opportunity, I just let it all out. At any rate, that was one of the major theories, believe it or not. And he had, of course, all the scientific proof you would want to see for why the Garden of Eden was at the North Pole. And today, I don't buy it at all because it just doesn't fit the description of what we have in Genesis chapter 4 with the 4 rivers that run in and out of the Garden of Eden. And at least we have 2 of them still existing today, the Tigris and Euphrates. But of course, the question comes up is how could the Tigris and Euphrates River survive the flood, being the flood was a worldwide deluge and would have, basically tore up any riverbed that was there. There are theories of how it could have survived. As a matter of fact, it may have preserved them because if you get water that is 15 cubits higher than the highest mountain of that day, well, the pressure from that water at the bottom of the ocean or whatever, riverbed or whatever, would tend to preserve the riverbed if it was there. And then once that water was gone, depending on how the water was taken away, you might have a lot remaining of those riverbeds. Okay, so as most people know who deal with water pressure tends to preserve the things that are at the bottom of the pressure because they just can't move. Okay, and there's nothing down there that's going to have motion enough to really disturb that pristine environment that is down very low. Okay, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of the bottom of the ocean. We have cameras now that go down there all the time, and it's a serene place. There's hardly any river or ocean currents going through there. They're usually up on the surface. They're not miles and miles down deep, although you get some, but not hardly as much as there is as you go toward the surface. So they may have been preserved. So with these rivers that the Hiddekel, I think, is another one, and the Pison is the other one in Genesis chapter 4. We don't have a good idea where they are. So, but there have been studies trying to figure out where they would be if we were to go look for them. So, and I've seen a few of those. So the Garden of Eden should be right around where those 4 rivers intersect in that area there. And although there are some people that say that Garden of Eden is in Jerusalem based on these rivers, I know Mackey, I think, is the guy that, and I still receive his papers today. I forget his first name, but I think he's the one that says that it was in Jerusalem. Other scholars who have done similar studies say that it is closer to Iraq in Babylon area, because that's where the Euphrates River is, and the Nile, of course, is on the other side of that whole I don't know what you would call that whole area there, but so they would say it's near Babylon because of the Euphrates River. The other, Mackey, I think, disagrees with that because he says it's not where the Euphrates River ends, it's where, I'm sorry, not where it begins, it's where it ends. And that would be more toward Jerusalem. So it's kind of hard to, we do have, evidence that it's right around that area, but we just can't be sure, okay? Especially since that was thousands of years ago. What would be there that would allow us to say, oh yeah, here's where the Garden of Eden was? And as a matter of fact, I know that when they did Operation Desert Storm, was it, in 91, there were a lot of biblical artifacts that were preserved in Iraq that, now this is all hearsay now, I'm not sure this is the case, but I heard that some American soldiers, drove tanks over this stuff and burned it, and, blah, blah, blah. And, the idea was the one world government's trying to destroy any vestige of religion or the Bible that was preserved in Iraq. And that was one of their objectives in going over to Iraq. So these things could not serve as icons of the past any longer once they're destroyed. Somebody had said that, maybe the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was there, and that had been preserved up until the time it was destroyed. You get all kinds of theories out there as to what possibly may have happened. Okay, but I'm just throwing that out because theories are theories for a reason. There's at least some evidence for it, but maybe not enough to prove it. So, but it's at least good to know what the scuttlebutt is circulating around the scholarly world as to what was going on. So now you say the tree of the two angels with the flaming swords, or the one angel with the flaming sword, would that be possible to spot? No, I don't think that would be possible. Angels, they're ministering spirits. They had a job to do, and that was basically for Adam and Eve, to show them that they could no longer take part. Not no longer, but they could not take part of the tree of life that would have given them life, that would have basically sacramentalized their obedience to God and made it official, and they would have lived happily ever after. But they couldn't do that. But once that message was given to them, there was no other purpose for it. Okay, they were cast out of the garden, so they no longer needed to see the flaming sword of the angel. And of course, the tree of life would have, it would not be the same tree of life that's talked about in Revelation or Apocalypse 22, because that's a symbolic tree of life there. Jesus is our tree of life, basically. So the tree of life really has no relevance anymore as far as this earth is concerned. Tree of life only has relevance insofar as it represents Jesus Christ. Okay, and that's who we will be partaking of in the new heaven and the new earth. Where is Adam buried? Yeah, I think I know the theory. And I forget the guy's name. I watched his videos, and he has some pretty convincing arguments. He also has a theory, and I'm talking, not remembering his name, but he also has a theory about Noah's flood and where the ark is. And I think it's his theory that the ark has dissolved, and all we see are what you would call ground markings of where the ark laid and where it deteriorated. And these deteriorations just made a mark, lines, so to speak, on the ground. And I think he's the one that claims that. So the ark no longer exists, and that we just see remnants of it in the dust, so to speak. He also has this theory about some kind of cave in Jerusalem beneath where Jesus was crucified. And if you follow this, the openings from Calvary, the place of the skull, down, and you dig down beneath that, you see some cave that basically, I think it's more than a cave. It's actually um, been furnished, as far as I remember. And you climb down the stairway and you get down to this place where it's been preserved, and not too many people know about it apparently, as the place where Adam was buried. Okay, what do you do with that stuff? Unless I could go over there and examine it myself, I can't give you a yay or nay on it. All right, I do know that the theory exists, and but there's a lot of legends out there. Okay, and religion is full of legends. Okay, you have to keep that in mind, and that helps us to separate the true from the false. Okay, I mean, there's an important aspect of believing that legends exist in Catholicism sometimes. Okay, if not religion in general, because legends let you know that somebody's been playing around with the truth and likes to make up stories and sell these stories, so to speak, for whatever their motive is. Okay, as opposed to telling the exact truth. And the exact truth is sometimes very hard to come by. Legends are easy to make up because all you have to do is make them up. And so, I'd be very careful about a legend that said that the blood of Christ seeped down into this place where Adam was buried and touched Adam. To me, that is just a little too fanciful. Okay. And the other thing is, we don't need that kind of stuff. We really don't need that to verify our faith. And there's a lot of other things very similar to that I just shrug my shoulders when I hear it, and I just say, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, okay, but I hope that's not what we're depending on to believe that all this took place. Okay. It makes a nice little story, that the second Adam could touch the first Adam in such a unique way with blood. I mean, it's a beautiful story. Who wouldn't like that story? Okay. I'd love to tell that story to my children at bedtime if I could, because it's just so fascinating. Okay. But then they open them up to all kinds of legends that might not be true. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about this kind of stuff, that, we live in a world where lies are told every day, every minute, every hour, every second. Lies are told, and both in religion and everywhere else. Okay. Separating the lies from the truth is a hard job. And just remember that. I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm saying basically, I don't know unless I were to go there and examine it myself. Now, the one thing, I still can't remember the guy's name, but he did have, a camera rolling as he looked at this. But of course, you can't see blood dropping from the crucifixion down to the place where you think Adam was buried. I mean, that's part of the legend, that's what happened. And he at least showed us the place where he thought it happened. I'll give him that much. Okay. At any rate, what else did you ask here? All right, so I gave you my sayest thou on those, and I hope I was helpful to you in some way. Bernard is here, Jose is here, Sherry is here. Drayton, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Drayton or Drayton, I don't know which is the correct one. Who did Adam and Eve's children marry and have kids with? Is that okay to have a relationship with your sibling? If it was okay back then, is it okay today? All right, so what is it? Genesis 4:3, 4:4, 4:5, right around there. It said, after it says that Adam and Eve had Seth, it says, and they had other sons and daughters. Okay, and both sons and daughters are in the plural in the Hebrew. Okay, so they had other sons and daughters. How many? Of course, we don't know. Doesn't say. But We know they had more sons, okay, than Cain, Abel, and Seth. We know they had they had daughters, and the daughters, not even one daughter is mentioned, but they had daughters, okay? So, you know, yeah, they would have married, you know, the brother would have married his sister, okay? That was the only people available, of course. At least we know that Genesis record tells us that there were enough sons and daughters that they could marry. Now, at that point in time, you know, there was no problem with the genetics like there would be today. Okay, and that's why we can't marry. There are laws in the United States, you can't marry your first cousin. And that's why they want to know your whole genetic and ancestral history when you get a marriage license in the United States. Okay, because it's against the law to marry your cousin, your first cousin at least. Okay, I'm not sure what it is with the second cousin, but I know what it is with the first cousin. And the people in England today still have problems with that because, you know, it's a monarchy over there, and you know, sometimes they intermarry and shouldn't intermarry, and the children sometimes turn out, you know, deformed or mentally unstable, or all kinds of things can go wrong. Okay, that was not the problem in the beginning, however. Okay, now let's take a good look at this. All right, how can we prove this? Well, Adam lived 930 years. Okay, and he was closest to the limit. The one who lived the longest was Methuselah, and that was about what, 5 generations down from Adam. Okay, so they were still going pretty strong. Noah himself lived to be 950 years old. Okay, so he lived longer than Adam did. All right, so we had a pristine environment there, and the genetic pool would not be harmful to a man at that time because of his strength. He was just, you know, the DNA was unharmed. The genetic pool was open-ended. And so at that time, you could marry your brother or your sister and not have any deleterious effects. Okay. Then after the flood, you know, the ages start to decrease rapidly. If you look at the Genesis 11 record, okay, you know, it goes like from 400 to 300 to 200. Then by the time you get to Abraham, he lived 175 years. And Joseph, who was the son of Jacob, lived 110 years. And then it goes, you know, lower and lower after that. So we see the flood had a tremendous effect on the climate of the earth, also a tremendous effect on our bodies. Because if in, you know, a few generations earlier, let's say 10, 15 generations earlier, you're dying in the 900s, and now you're dying in the hundreds, all right, something happened to the body. Okay, it's just not as strong as it was before. And so the gene pool is closing up, and the limitations are going to be great because the body is just not as strong as it was to fight any kind of diseases, you know. And that would be a great reason why these people started dying at younger ages, because of the diseases. Prior to that, of course, you know, the body could take care of any disease that came along, basically. All right. And before Adam's sin, you can imagine how great the body was. But God let it deteriorate slowly over time, not just, you know, bang, bang. He let it deteriorate slowly until, you know, you get to the time of the Egyptian, when the Israelites were in Egypt, and they were dying around the same time we die today, you know. And then God cut it off to 70 to 80 years, as David wrote in the Psalms. So the reason, you know, they could marry their siblings again is because there were, you know, you had a much stronger humanity at that time than you do today. Kwok says, Dr. Genesis, the traditional teaching that Adam and Eve and Noah lived over 900 years. A lot of questions about Adam and Eve and Noah and all those guys tonight. Where's all this coming from? Yes, and believe every word of it, Quack. Okay, that's what the Bible says, and that's what we would expect. Okay, I mean, before the flood, we would expect the earth to be in a pristine environment. Okay, I mean, it was made for us to. If Adam hadn't sinned, nobody would have died. And that's what the tree of life was all about. It would have sacramentalized Adam's obedience so that it could now be transferred to the whole human race. All his progeny would never come under a test like Adam did. They would be benefiting from Adam's obedience, and they would never die. Okay? And now, wow. Can you imagine what kind of body that would have taken to not die? I mean, let's say you fell off a cliff, I mean, if that's possible in that kind of world. And the reason I say if that's possible, because when Jesus was confronted with that very question from the devil, Jesus, the devil says, hey, throw yourself off this cliff. Because it says in the Psalms, I think it's Psalm 92, the angels will hold you up by their wings, and lest you dash your foot against a stone. Okay, which means that God would be taking care of it. So all the contingencies of the dangers of life would be known by this omniscient God, and he could stop any of them from happening. You see, if you did happen to slip on a rock and fall off the cliff, he would be there so that you wouldn't die. Okay. And that could have been that way, or it could have been that maybe, hey, it was so pristine that we would have never slipped off a cliff. That our every movement would have been so watched by God and cared for that we would have never been in danger to lose this life of this flesh. Or you could say that even if the flesh did get wounded, your body would be so great, so wonderfully made that it could repair any rupture to it that happens at all. Okay, maybe in a matter of minutes. Who knows? Anything could have happened. So I'm just giving you out possibilities of what it might have been like. But when the Bible says, Adam lived 930 years, that's fact. That's scientific fact. Okay. There's no fudging with that. And that's, as I said, what we would expect from an antediluvian pristine age, all right, of people that were made in the image of God, who originally were not supposed to die at all. Okay. After the flood, we can see why these ages would begin decreasing, because the whole climate of the earth changed drastically. Okay. So, there we had more water, and once you have more water, you're going to have greater temperature droppage, and you're going to have, variances in barometric pressure, and all kinds of things are going to happen that are not going to be conducive to life as they were before the flood, you see. So yes, they're all true. Okay. And if you add them all up, where do you come out? Well, you come out, as the Father said, about 5,000 BC, 5,500 is about the highest that they go, right around there. Okay. And there was a guy named Bishop Ussher who said that the atom was created in 4004 BC. And he gets his figures a little mixed up because of the way he added up the sojourn in Egypt for the Israelites and a few other things. Okay, so unfortunately, as popular as that date was, and it's even in the Douay-Rheims Bible, don't use that one. Okay. There are other dates you can use, and I write about all those possibilities in my book on Genesis. It's called Genesis chapters 1 to 11. I think there's like 600, 700 pages in that book. Okay, and I go through all these issues in meticulous detail for you. So there you go, Quack. Hey, buy yourself a Christmas present. Okay. The book of Genesis, chapters 1 to 11. Go to robertsongenesis.com.org.net, whatever, and pick yourself up a copy. and read about all this. All right, Bernard says, Ferdinand Crombet, a French Catholic scientist, claimed that Jerusalem was at the center of the earth, but not sure if he mentioned it as being the Garden of Eden. Yeah, he did. And, you know, that's a possibility, but see, here's the problem with that. You know, a sphere like the earth doesn't have a center, okay? A sphere where at least the people live is, you know, basically two-dimensional, all right? The center of the earth would be, you know, in, you know, the molten iron part of the earth, 4,000 miles down. That's the center of a sphere. So I don't, you know, I think what he did, if I remember correctly, Crombet, was he basically got, he made a map of, let's say, you know, Northern Africa, Asia Minor, and basically drew a circle around all those biblical territories from the Old and New Testament, okay? And then, you know, after he drew his circle, then of course you can find the center of that circle. And the claim may be that, you know, Jerusalem is in the center of that circle. But, you know, Jerusalem is right next to the Mediterranean Sea, and, you know, you're going to have to go pretty far out to the west with your circle, and that's going to be somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. So how do you determine that part of that circle that you're drawing to make Jerusalem the center of that circle is going to be, you know, what markings do you have to make the perimeter of that circle cut through some part of the Atlantic Ocean? Okay. Now it would be easier on the other side. You know, if you went to the other side, you know, you've got Babylon, and you got Assyria to the north. You know, that could be part of your circle. Okay, but you know, when you get into the west part of it, it's I don't see how he can make that circle, unless what he did was he made, you know, Europe, Assyria as part of the circle, and then he came and made Babylon part of the circle, and then he made the Sinai Desert part of the circle, and then by basically filling in the gaps, he made the circle go through the Atlantic Ocean in a nondescript area of the Atlantic Ocean. That might have made his circle. You know, okay, that's acceptable. Okay, but how do you get, you know, so it's arbitrary though. The whole thing's arbitrary as to where the boundaries of the circle are going to be that you're going to draw to make Jerusalem the center. Okay, so I really don't get into that. Let's not get into it. I mean, I really don't. I'm not compelled by that theory of Crombet. Okay, and I'm not compelled by a lot of other theories that Crombet wrote about. And one of them is geocentrism. Okay, and not that, of course, I don't believe in it, geocentrism, but I don't believe Crombet's version of geocentrism. I really think this guy went way off the track, and I know this organization in France, excuse me, CHESE, I forget what it stands for, CHESE, I'm not sure. Okay, I think it's got 5 letters to the acronym. It's been a long time since I studied them, but yeah, you got to be real careful with this Crombet guy, because, you know, what he did or tried to do is he tried to say that the Hebrew of Genesis 1 and 2 was not the way that we were to interpret Genesis 1 and 2. In other words, it would be wrong in his view to go into the grammar and the etymology of the words of Genesis 1 and 2 to use that to interpret Genesis 1 and 2. His idea was that the Hebrew letters that were written were to be interpreted by the Coptic sounds that would be elicited from them. And to me, that's just like, where are you getting this from? And his claim was that there was a crossover between the Hebrew and the Coptic. The Coptic is the Egyptian. The Coptic languages, wherein if you really wanted to know the true meaning of Genesis, you didn't pay attention to the Hebrew meanings of the words. You would pay attention to the Coptic sounds that were made from the Hebrew that gave you Coptic words, and you used those definitions of those words to interpret. You know, I just, wow. He's the only scholar in the world that's ever come up with that kind of theory, and I just personally think it's off the wall, totally. So that makes everything else he said suspect. Because if he can't figure out where he's going to get the truth from, and he has such a disrespect for the original Hebrew, the inspired original Hebrew of Genesis 1 and 2, as the source from the Hebrews themselves of their own word definitions, if you're going to reject that, you better have a darn good reason for doing that. And not just think, well, maybe these are Coptic sounds that need to be interpreted from, you know, Coptic meanings. So, okay, you know, and, you know, he believed that the earth came out of the sun. He believed that the moon came out of the earth, that kind of stuff. So, wow. You know, I just don't get any hint of that, either from the fathers or from the biblical revelation, whether it's in Genesis or the Psalms or Ecclesiastes, some in Proverbs. These are all the Old Testament books that talk about creation, and they don't even give a hint to that kind of creation, you know, where one's popping out of the other. So, you know, again, I think he's off the track there. And even geocentrists, he didn't even believe that the earth was fixed. He believed that he said that it moved at the pace of a man walking. You know, and this is how he interpreted the Michelson-Morley experiment of 1887. Okay, because there was a slight fringe shift. You know, they expected a big fringe shift because they thought the earth was going around the sun. They only got 1/10 of that. So Crombie got the idea that, well, that meant the earth was moving just a little bit. Okay, so it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if he believed that the earth was moving just a little bit and the sun was going around it, all right, you know, that's one possibility, I guess. But, you know, here again, the Bible says that the earth is fixed, says it's not moving. Okay, if it was moving at the pace of a man, then the Bible would be lying to us. Okay, so why a guy like that couldn't see that he's going off the track when he makes those kinds of interpretations of this famous experiment, I don't know. Okay, so I'm just trying to fill in the gaps for you to let you know what else Crombie said, so that everything, you know, if I were giving you my advice, I'd say you take everything he says with a grain of salt. Okay, because you can't get the basic things right. You know, I'm not going to depend on you for the details. Okay, so there you go. Kevin says, I keep hearing about these radical traditionalists who think that geocentrism is true and heliocentrism is wrong. What are your thoughts on the Kevin, you must be new to these talks. This is your first time. Yeah, well, let me enlighten you or educate you, Kevin. Yeah, geocentrism is true. Heliocentrism is false. Okay, I've spent the last going on 17 years now proving that, both from science, the Bible, ecclesiastical history, and our patristic history. The science, to me, is a slam dunk. Okay. And the reason being is that we have some of our greatest scientists that the Earth has ever produced telling us that geocentrism is a viable possibility for a scientific model of the universe. And his name was Albert Einstein. Okay, can't get much higher than Albert Einstein. All right, so I'm getting it from the horse's mouth. Now, Einstein will also say that he doesn't prefer the geocentric model, and there's good reasons for that. In his philosophical framework, because he doesn't believe in God. All right, he was an atheist. The only God he believed is the God of mathematics, so to speak. And that's it. He believed in Spinoza's God, and that was not a personal God at all. Okay, so if you don't believe there's a God, you're not going to believe that he made the earth. You're going to believe that the earth came here by time and chance. And if it came here by time and chance, it sure ain't going to get in the center of the universe. Okay, so that's why he prefers not to believe in geocentrism, although his own physics said that it was a perfectly viable model. Okay, so there you have it. All right, now in order to understand, or I'm sorry, in order to know all this information, you have to read my books. And so there's another reason why you would want to go to robertsongenis.org. Actually, this time you go to journeytothecenteroftheearth.com. Journey to the center of the earth. I'm sorry, journey to the center of the universe. Okay, journey to the center of the universe.com, and you'll find all the books there that I've written, probably about 15 or so. We have some movies for you. The Principle, that was in theaters in 2014, and Journey to the Center of the Universe is also there. That's the sequel to The Principle. That's available. So do yourself a favor, go get that material and brush up on this, and maybe we can talk about it again. I also have 2 movies free on YouTube. One of them is called Einstein, the Closet Geocentrist. 2.5 hours of scientific information for you about this very topic. Okay, so go check that one out. All right, so Bernard says his study also had the Pangea as part of his study. Yeah, now the Pangea, Bernard, is not exclusive to Crombat. That's the thing about Pangea. So he just took up on that from what other people have said, and there's many scientists out there who promote Pangea, and that's just the idea that the continents of the Earth that are spread out now were once together in one landmass, and it's almost like a puzzle. You could fit South America into Africa, you can fit Europe and Asia down, make them compact with the eastern part of Africa. North America can come in there. So that's an old idea. Okay, old idea. And they part of it was formulated by the fact that there's still continental drift that they can detect. Okay, and so I'm not surprised you would latch on to that because it explains a lot of things that can't be explained otherwise, which is good. But again, that's not exclusive to Crombat, so I would not give him any prizes for believing in Pangea. Quack says, what is your view on John Paul II's theology of the body? Not very high, Quack, if you want to know the truth. I believe that this was a venture in his own mind that he took and developed, and the results of it today are not good. Okay, not good. Maybe you have, what's his name, Christopher West, who still makes, he still has lectures about this all over the place. And basically what it's trying to do, as far as I can tell, the whole theology of the body, a motif was, to not be shameful about your body, and all that kind of thing. Yeah, if we lived in an ideal environment, perfect world, maybe that might be true. okay? But we don't. Those days are gone. They were gone in the Garden of Eden. And to try to revive them as evidence that there's sort of this new wave in the church where things that have been hidden are now suddenly going to be revealed for the beauty that they are, and we can all enjoy. This the whole mentality of mid-century or mid-20th century Catholicism, where the past got it wrong. The tradition of the church got it wrong. And what was the tradition of the church about as far as the theology of the body? There was no theology of the body, okay? The theology of the body was said simply. In other words, yeah, the body's beautiful, but there's a lot of sin out there. And so we have to be very careful with our bodies, okay? We cannot see the beauty of the body in such a respect that, well, we can go on exhibition, so to speak. Okay, like John Paul II, used to have pagan women dancing around him, bare-breasted pagan women dancing around him. And he could claim that would be okay because, the body's beautiful and we can't be too puritanical about the body because God made it and we're made in the image of God and all this kind of stuff. Trying to put some kind of freedom into our thinking about the body and to break away the limitations that have been put on the body in the rest of the tradition of Catholicism. Okay? Well, there was a reason that the church put constraints on the body for 1980 years before he became Pope. And that's because of the sin that's latent within every one of us. Okay? I mean, even one of the commandments says, thou shalt not covet. What is coveting there? Coveting is just the desire to have your neighbor's wife. Okay? Just thinking about it. Okay? Now you have the sixth commandment also, that's thou shalt not commit adultery. That's, normally that's actually going in, to have sexual intercourse with another person other than your spouse. Okay, everybody knows that. Okay, but even that sin, Jesus said, a man commits. Just looking with lust upon a woman. Okay, which coincides with the ninth commandment, but only in that commandment, the one you're lusting after is another man's wife. Okay, so I mean, look at the constraints. 2 of the commandments of the 10 commandments, that's 20% of the commandments, are about sex. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you take this seriously, and if you go through the New Testament, what do you see? What's the biggest sin in the New Testament? Fornication. And I'm including in there lesbianism, homosexuality, adultery, pornography, because the word porneia in Greek covers all that area. Okay? That's the biggest problem we have. Okay? Is sex. So why you would want to take off the constraints that the church has built up for 19 and a half centuries because you think the body's beautiful. And you're going to give us all these highfalutin philosophical theories about, why we should relate to the body in a totally different way than we related back in our tradition. That's a pie in the sky idea. That's a dreamer's idea because we don't live in that world. Okay, we live in the world where there's sin around every corner. And once you start taking the restraints off of sexual relations, what do you get? Well, you got exactly what John Paul got. Yeah, you get homosexuality in the seminaries, okay? Yeah, and it all started right around when he began his pontificate. Okay? First we had Pope Paul VI lead us into the way, little by little. And then John Paul, with theology of the body, just put it in the next gear. Okay? Because you had all this sexual freedom now. All right? And so you had to create this theology of the body. Like, we needed something like that. And all it did was make the sexual explosion exponential. And then when we tried to tell him that he had homosexuals running the church, he didn't listen to anybody, because he believed his church was the perfect church, as if nothing could go wrong. We were in the after wake of Vatican II, and we were going to have a new Pentecost, and he was going to be one of the popes that led us there. Okay, and here he had a church that was full of homosexuals, full of pedophiles, that it's just the worst scandal the church has ever had in its history. And he was oblivious to it. And whenever he was approached on it, he would just say, well, that's the other side just trying to make us look bad. That was his excuse. Okay? So, you know, the whole milieu of this theology of the body, my gosh. You know, you have to have open eyes to see this. Okay? And I'm sorry that the Pope has to be at the center of this storm, but he was. And there you have it. Okay? So, no, we don't need a theology of the body. All this creates is more sexual deviance. And now we have Catholics using sex toys, you know, husband and wife using sex toys. Husband and wife are told to have anal intercourse in a book written by a guy who's on EWTN. Okay? You know, that's what the theology of the body has given us. Okay? Where the constraints are now off. We can act like the world in our sexual relations and with no repercussions. Okay? So that's what I think about the theology of the body. I could say a lot more about it, okay, but I'm just giving you the basics here. All right, what is your favorite? I don't know what that word is, Kevin. A-N-I-M-E? My favorite? I don't even know how to pronounce that. So write back and let me know what that is. Sherry says, I think the Garden of Eden is in Africa. Okay. Well, good, Sherry. Give us the reason for that. Why do you think? You know, Northern Africa, Southern, East, West, where in Africa, and why would you believe that? You know, just a short couple of sentences. I'd like to see it. What you have to say. Kevin, glad to be here tonight. Nice to have you, Kevin. Jordan says, I thought God couldn't have anything to do with Satan because of how God is holy and perfect. But in Job, it describes Satan and God conversing. How can it be they are speaking to each other? Well, see, Jordan, Satan won that right in the Garden of Eden. He got God's creature to sin against God, and it put Satan in rule over mankind. Now, God, of course, has the ultimate rule, but by the rules of justice, you know, Satan won the right to have rule over mankind. Okay? So when it comes to dealing with a man like Job, who Satan has rule over, well, who's going to be the one instigating it? That was God, challenging Satan's rule to show him that it wasn't as dominant as he thought it was. And that's why God comes back and says, have you seen my servant Job? You know, first God asks Satan, you know, where have you been? I've been roaming to and fro along the earth to see, you know, how mankind is doing, so to speak. And God says, have you seen my servant Job? And yeah, but he only obeys you because of what you give him. Oh boy, those were the wrong words to say. So then the challenge comes, and and God makes his bet with the devil. Okay, that can happen, as I said, because Satan won the right to rule over man. Okay, and so God stuck with him. God stuck with him until the God-man, Jesus Christ, comes and defeats the devil and sets up the stage so that God can take over again. Whereas the devil has been ruling before. 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, Satan is the god of this world. Okay? You wonder why things are as bad as they are? Okay? Because Satan is the god of this world. God with a little g, not big G. Okay? Now again, God is the ultimate ruler. Okay? But God must do things the way that they turned out, you see. It turned out that his own creature, of his own free will, rebelled against him. And God, by justice, had to put a curse on the earth and allow Satan to rule. Okay? Because God can't lie. God's going to have to do what's required of him. If he's going to make this world and place everything on Adam, place all the bets on Adam, and Adam fails, God has to suffer the consequences. Yeah. Okay? And God's going to have to make up for those consequences if he wants to salvage it. Okay? He could have just destroyed it if he wanted to. Okay? And he almost did that in Noah's day. He could have destroyed it. Right after Adam sinned, he said, okay, that's it. It's over. Okay? It'll just be me and the angels. And Adam and Eve will be in hell forever. Okay? But he went on, because he wanted to salvage whatever was left, whatever he could take from this earth. And so, Adam had his progeny and so on and so on. Then the Redeemer came, Jesus Christ. And he appeased the fathers. And that's another thing that God had to do. See, God had to preserve his honor. He just couldn't say, oh, well, let everybody be saved. And, what's the diff? You can't do that, because then you're lying. Okay? Because then you're not preserving your honor. If you just give salvation willy-nilly, you're not preserving your honor. You're not comprehending what these creatures did to you. These creatures wanted to replace you. They wanted to get rid of you. That's why the devil came and said, well, God's lying to you. He knows when you eat that fruit, you're going to become just like him. You're going to become gods just like him, which means you don't need him. You can make it on your own. And they were going to replace God. That's why it was such a grievous sin. Okay? So, but God's got to play by the rules. This is the advantage that Satan thought that he had over God. See, because Satan, he can use evil, he can use good, and he can use anything in between to get his plan accomplished. Okay? Well, that's pretty good. He could lie, he could even tell the truth, or some mixture of a lie and a truth, to get people to do what he wanted them to do. Because there's no constraints on him. He lives by no rules. He has no honor to preserve. He just does whatever comes to his mind that's going to accomplish the feat he has in his mind of what he wants to do. He doesn't care about lying, the truth, nothing. Okay? But God's actions all have to be the truth. He can never lie. He can never do something that's bad. He always has to do good, because that's who he is. Okay? But his creature didn't recognize that. All right? And which means God lost his honor to that creature. And so in order to preserve his honor and yet save mankind, he has to have Jesus Christ come to die on the cross to preserve God's honor. And that way, salvation wouldn't be given willy-nilly. Yeah, there was a huge price to pay. Okay? And thank God that our Savior Jesus Christ did it. And he's the only one that could have done it. Okay, so there you have it. So God's got to play by the rules. All right? Can't skimp out on the rules of justice, of integrity, of truth, all this. That's why why does God constantly tell us these in the scripture? Because that's who he is. Okay? He is truth, holiness, righteousness, everything, all wrapped up into one. And we're made in God's image. And that's why he wants us to copy that. Okay? And if you're like that, there's certain rules you have to abide by. Okay? You can't use evil to accomplish good. That's one thing. Okay? So that's a very limiting factor. So everything God does to accomplish the defeat of the devil and the salvation of mankind, all has to be the truth, all has to be good, no lies, whatever. Okay? Because that's who God is. He can't be anything other than that. Okay? So, again, Satan rules this world. That's why it's evil as it is. And God's giving him his time. And then when all that God wanted to accomplish is accomplished, and his honor is preserved, as his son did for him, dying on the cross, it's just a matter of time until it all comes to an end for the devil, because he's defeated. And God did it the good, truthful way. Okay, so there's nothing he has to regret. Not at all. He did everything the right way. Took a little time, but he did everything the right way. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. All right, we're going over time here, so I'm going to have to cut it off soon. Jose says, there's a theory that implies Satan was the first to eat from the tree of the good and evil. Have you ever heard this? No, and it is false, Jose. Do you think you were able to make a positive impact on Rob Skiba and the Flat Earth people? I was hoping Rob would follow up and debate you on Catholicism. Have you kept in contact with Rob? I think he could be brought into the Catholic Church. Well, Jordan, I hope you're right that he's thinking about I sent Rob, we went at it on paper. This was before we had our debate, I believe, because he made some accusations about Catholicism in a video he made. And I went through that video and I answered every objection he brought up. And I did spend a lot of time on it. And I sent that to him. And I said, Rob, if you ever like to talk about this, please do so. I'm here for you. I said, this is my job. It's what I do for a living. Okay. And I think that paper I sent him was about 20 pages, 25 pages long or more. And, I did a really good job on it, because I said, hey, I'd love to get this guy in the Catholic Church. But I sent him that, and he put it on the shelf. I don't even know if he read it. And then we had our debate. And when was that? When was that debate? Was that 2018? I forget. At any rate, and the debate was the last time I heard of Ron, heard from Rob. Sometimes I call him Ron. Last time I heard from Rob was the debate. I think he invited me to watch the debate on the YouTube channel he made, and that was it. So it's been quite a while. So I thought I did a great job. He only wanted to talk about the Bible in the debate regarding the flat earth. And so I accommodated him. I talked about the Bible. And thought I did a good job. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to talk to me. I don't know. I don't want to be proud about this, but to answer your question, I haven't heard from him, so I don't know where he stands. My friend Lucas Gibson is a modernist who believes in heliocentrism, Kevin says. Okay. Well, Kevin, now you know what to do. Have him look at the videos on YouTube. Okay. Again, the title is Einstein, the Closet Geocentrist. Okay. Have them look at that, and then tell them to call me in the morning. Drayton says, what are your thoughts on the Pope putting Pachamama on the altar in Rome and the two young men coming and throwing it in the river? Well, I'm with the men who threw it in the river, Drayton, because the Pope had no business doing, worship of fertility gods, basically is what he was doing, okay? It has nothing to do with Catholicism at all. And it just tells you how far down the beaten path Pope Francis is. And I'm not surprised at anything that he does now. I mean, I've seen this now for, since 2013, 6 years. Every year it gets worse, what he's doing with the church. What is he now, 82 or 83, something. So, his day of death is coming. Hopefully God will give us a pope that is faithful to Catholicism. But this guy, I mean, that alone just tells you how far he's gone astray. So it's just a matter of time now. All right. Suzanne is here. Bob Holmes, Sue, Viking. May I ask if that EWTN theology of the body advocate you mentioned earlier was Lynn Murphy? No, it wasn't Lynn Murphy. It was Greg Popchak. Okay, he's been doing this on EWTN for quite a long time. Okay, Sherry, you're going to have the last comment here, and then I'm going to close up for the night. I've read somewhere scientists made the claim our first parents came out of Africa. That's why. I don't really know. You intimidate me. Sorry, Sherry. All right, well, listen, Sherry, I'm going to give you some homework to do, okay? And if you want to come back tomorrow. We'll be here tomorrow, 7 to 8. Do some research on that, okay? Tell me where in Africa. Some scientists, give me the names of those scientists. If not, if you don't want to, that's fine. I'm just saying, if you want to pursue this at all, I'd like to see that information. Okay, I've heard of Africa too, but basically the cradle of Africa, right on the eastern side of Africa, below Ethiopia, and right near right near Egypt and Israel and all in that little area there. I've heard of that. Okay. So if that's what you mean, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Okay. All right. So it's nice being with you all. Thank you for another time. And we'll be here tomorrow again on the 27th from 7 to 8 p.m. for the open question program. So get your questions ready, your thoughts, comments, whatever, and I'll be happy to address them tomorrow at that time. Until that time, God bless you all. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.